Hello there. Welcome into a Wednesday edition of the show. Back in studio for this one. Thank goodness. Appreciate you joining me, whether it's on your radio, online at extrasports1300.com, or through the Extra Sports 1300 app, which is free to download and free to use. And it's sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming away over the course of the program, and a borderline cavalcade of outstanding guests. Corey Roldan from KKTV 11 will join me within the next 20 minutes to discuss mostly Broncos. Hour two, Shea Serrano, very talented writer, podcaster. He has a new book out that all basketball fans should definitely pick up. I'll talk to Shea coming up next hour. The rest of the time, it's you and me at 719-247-1313. I'll get to a few of your lingering text messages from yesterday because we re-aired the first hour of the program in hour three, and you had some thoughts on what I discussed. And I don't want to leave you hanging. I want you to have your say, so we'll get to those over the course of the program as well. A lot to do. Busy day. Let's get going with the Denver Broncos and just kind of the idea here that the Denver Broncos not making a move. You know, I like to kind of re-examine things after the news isn't so breaking and just kind of let it marinate a little bit. How would you have liked Jalen Waddle on the Denver Broncos? Because I don't think you can look at anyone that actually got traded yesterday and say, oh, the Broncos had to have that guy. Would you like to have Sauce Gardner? Sure. Would you like to have Quinnen Williams? Probably. But in terms of upgrading a position and upgrading a position of need, there wasn't a lot of movement across the NFL that you go, man, why did the Broncos sit this one out? And I'm even talking about Jacoby Myers and Rashid Shaheed. Neither are huge difference-making wide receivers. They're supplementary receivers. But I do like Shaheed. I do like what he brings to the table. But what he brings to the table is something that the Broncos have no use for. The Denver Broncos have no use for a guy that runs really, really fast a long distance down the field because they don't have a quarterback that can consistently hit a receiver that does that. Marvin Mims can do that, and yet see how they're using him. And they don't use him in that way a lot. So I like Rashid Shaheed. I just don't know that he's a fit with the Denver Broncos. Jalen Waddle's a fit with the Denver Broncos. He's been playing with a quarterback that has to get rid of the ball quickly, that most of his game is 5 to maybe 15 yards down the field at a time. And Jalen Waddle, over the course of his career, has been successful to a degree. But again, it's a dependent position. I could look at Jalen Waddle with what he's done with Tua and say he could be better with Bo Nix. And he could be better in Sean Payton's offense. Guy that gets in and out of his breaks quickly, a guy that can make plays near the line of scrimmage. I think he'd be a phenomenal fit with the Denver Broncos. And Jalen Waddle, regardless of his skill set, would immediately become the best wide receiver that the Denver Broncos have. So he's a fit 8 different ways with this team. And these are the thoughts that should be running through the head of Sean and George Payton. They should be big game hunting on the trade market, in free agency, in the draft. They should say, you know, not just, hey, we need a little help here, little help there. Certainly there are always needs for those kind of moves, depth pieces. But I think where the Broncos are right now, they should be saying, if we're going to make a move, we need to get a guy that is a hand in glove fit. And Jalen Waddle would have been that. However, an asking price from Miami of a first-round pick plus more says to me, one, Miami's not serious about trading him. Miami didn't want to get rid of him. And honestly, why should they? Why should they want to get rid of Jalen Waddle? They're going to draft a quarterback in April. They don't want Jalen Waddle with Tyreek Hill on the way out. They don't want Jalen Waddle to pair with their new young quarterback. And I said it when Miami fired their general manager. And this idea that, they were going to have a fire sale. Did Miami make one move, by the way? Did they make one? I don't think so. And I knew Jalen Waddle wasn't going to go anywhere. But Jordan Schultz reporting yesterday that the player that the Denver Broncos were interested in was Jalen Waddle. But clearly, in the world where it takes two to tango, the Broncos did not have a willing dance partner because Miami, that's an unserious asking price. Nobody is going to pay that because here's the thing. I'm not opposed to paying wide receivers if they are of a certain quality. And I think Jalen Waddle is of that quality. And he's going to be compensated as such. In 2 years, he's going to count $33 million against whatever team he's on's cap. So he is that. And when you have a quarterback like Bo Nix, who is on a rookie deal, you can spend that way. And I'm also, in another way, not opposed to giving up premium draft capital for players that are of an elite level. But I'm not a fan at that position of doing both simultaneously. Right? If this was 2 years ago, maybe a first-round pick is a real conversation. The guy's going to get paid $33 million in a couple of years. If he had 4 years before he got $33 million, then it's a different conversation. Or if the Denver Broncos did not have to give up premium draft capital, but they did have to sign Jalen Waddle, which is usually the way this works. Right? Usually the asking price goes down because the team that's trading a guy knows that the other team is not going to be willing to pay top market value in terms of the trade value and turn around and sign a pending free agent for a top of market price. Usually, and that's why the Miami Dolphins were unserious about trading Jalen Waddle. Because if the next team has to pay him, and the Broncos would have, or whatever team acquires him would have, because he's already set to make that big money, you have to ask for less. That's just the way this works. And the Miami Dolphins didn't. So I don't blame the Denver Broncos for saying, wait, you're asking for a first-round pick and then some, and after next year, we got to pay this guy $33 million a year? I don't blame the Denver Broncos for saying thanks, but no thanks. And now what the Broncos can do is look at the draft. I don't think they're going to be in the Jordan Tyson business, but we know how Sean Payton loves his tall receivers. There's a kid coming out of Tennessee that's 6'5". His name is Chris Brazell. Looks like the archetype for Sean Payton. USC's got a couple of very projectable wide receivers. I think that's where this is going. I think the report from Jordan Schultz gives you a window into what the Denver Broncos are thinking. And they're thinking, if we're going to make a move or when we go into the draft, we want a difference maker. I think you already kind of saw it with this past draft with Jahdae Barron. The thinking was, we got a guy that we can pair with Patrick Surtain for the next 5 to 7 years and have a better second corner than any other team in the NFL. That was at least the vision, right? They didn't go necessarily need or the biggest need. They went a need, I think. They needed some help there. I still think that they do, but they wanted a difference-making player, regardless of position. And I think that's their mentality. But with Jalen Waddle, their interest level in him, that's a difference maker, but that's also a difference maker at a position that you're going to need one. So we're still going to go down this road where we're going to look at the Denver Broncos at the end of the season and say they need to upgrade their skill positions, particularly guys that catch the football. But do they have to do that right this second? I don't know that they do, especially at that price. And I'll give an example from another sport. 2019, the summer of 2019, I was on this show making, in my humble opinion, a very strong case for why the Denver Nuggets should bring in Chris Middleton. It would have costed a lot of money. The guy was set to make, he ended up signing for a max deal with the Milwaukee Bucks. But I said, this is a difference-making player that this team that was trending up needs to add to push them over the top. And to this day, I still feel like Chris Middleton would have been a fantastic addition to the Denver Nuggets. But look at what happened, right? The Nuggets, I don't think there was a lot of interest there. They go into a very odd 2019-2020 season. They go into the bubble. You feel a little bit different about Jamal Murray after that experience. You kind of recalibrate who the Nuggets are or what they may be. Jeremy Grant leaves, opening up a definite need. And in short order, they go out and get Aaron Gordon. And they give up not that much. A first-round pick in the NBA is not nearly worth as much as a first-round pick in the NFL. They give up a guy that has had completely maxed out his talent in Denver and Gary Harris. And they bring in a guy who, as well as I think Chris Middleton would have fit and would have made the Denver Nuggets title contenders on the spot, you can't sit here and say that the Denver Nuggets didn't make out better getting Aaron Gordon. So I would apply that to this situation. What the Broncos have on their side is time. It would have been nice for the Broncos to participate in the arms race after the Colts landed Sauce Gardner. But look at the situation that the Colts are in. They got to pay Daniel Jones after this season. Jonathan Taylor is a running back, which you know the shelf life, the clock is ticking on Jonathan Taylor being at the height of his powers. He's due a payday after next season. I would argue the Colts are a team that has to go all in right now, that has to take the first available opportunity to add a position of need and pay a premium price to get it. As much as Jalen Waddle would have helped the Denver Broncos, would have made them better, would have fit with this team, all that kind of stuff, the Denver Broncos can afford to bring in the Nuggets back into the conversation, not skip steps. They can see what they have in Troy Franklin and Pat Bryant for the rest of this year. And then in the offseason, they can look at it. It's price, what you're what it's going to cost to bring in that help, but it's also timing. And I just don't, I can understand why neither was right for the Denver Broncos. And with Bo Nix still on his rookie deal, there is time for the Denver Broncos to supplement this roster, add to it. Now, it moves quickly, right? I don't think that the Broncos are going to be able to run it back with this offense next year. I think I'm just talking about yesterday being the trade deadline and the rest of this season. I think that the Broncos could afford to only big game hunt and ultimately decide, no, we're not willing to pay that price. Maybe something else will come along afterwards. So I understand why the Broncos didn't make a move. Now, I don't think they have everything they need at the skill positions. I will continue to maintain that. But for this season, yeah, see what you got in these guys, reassess this offseason, and see what's out there. I'll take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. I think Jalen Waddle would have been a great fit, but Miami was not serious about doing him, and the Broncos shouldn't have paid that price. And by the way, Broncos were not the only team that balked at the asking price of the Miami Dolphins. I will ask Corey Roldan of KKTV 11 whether the Broncos should have made a move. The sports anchor for KKTV joins me next. or the 13th texter. Hook you up with a pair of tickets to see Tom Segura coming up on Sunday at the Broadmoor World Arena. And working on getting Corey Rolden efforting, as we say in the business. And Corey will join me to talk a little bit more about the Denver Broncos and what they have tomorrow night against the Vegas Raiders. And I get that the familiar refrain in games like this is trap game. I've even heard some people that I work with theorizing that the Raiders are going to win tonight. I just can't. Everything, all the elements of a trap game are absolutely there. I'm not denying that. I just feel like the Broncos have come this far. They're on the cusp of this showdown with the Kansas City Chiefs. What, honestly, the Broncos have been waiting for since they were bounced by Buffalo, right? When Sean Payton said, we felt good about the next matchup if we would have won today. This is what they've been waiting for. And I don't see, while all the elements of a trap game are there, I don't see the Broncos slipping up in this spot. I would have thought it would be, like maybe the Dallas game, although the Dallas game has, probably not once they traded Micah Parsons, but like Houston. No. Yeah, Houston could have been. I guess they were playing better football at the time. But I just think it would have happened before Vegas. And with the Broncos on this 6-game winning streak, I just don't see them stubbing their toe against the Raiders on Thursday. Divisional game, it's going to be close. I don't think that the Broncos, for those maybe hoping that the Broncos do to the Raiders what they did to the Cowboys, that's not going to happen. It's the divisional game. There's institutional knowledge. Although Pete Carroll is new, but he's coached against Sean Payton long enough to know what Sean Payton is all about. I think it will be a closer game than maybe the discrepancy in talent and records would tell you. But this also gives Sean Payton an opportunity to do the thing that he loves to do and like bring up facts and figures and analytics on teams. He probably has a record for teams that have won 6 in a row heading into a Thursday night game. And it might be just 3 games in the history of football, but he'll find it and he'll find film and he will show the Denver Broncos. This is actually a chance. And maybe that's the gift of all of this, is that it is a short week, that it is a situation in which, regardless of the opponent, you got to be buttoned up because you have a short week to prepare. And I think Sean Payton is going to be able to go to his team and harp on the fact that this is a difficult turnaround for them. But man, what a letdown it would be for the Denver Broncos to have won 6 in a row, be a week away from that showdown with Kansas City, and then stub their toe against the lowly Raiders. Don't think that they will. But I understand the sentiment from people. Right? Certainly next week's game, much bigger than this one. Poor opponent. You're rolling. Yes, this is the textbook definition of a trap game. But that does not mean you will succumb to that, right? It is a trap game, but are the Broncos going to lose this trap game? I don't think so. 719-247-1313. There's a lot of discussion. We had this yesterday about the Broncos and kind of getting back to their regularly scheduled programming with the struggling through three quarters and coming alive in the fourth. And I asked the question yesterday, and I'll continue to ask it today. You'll hear from Bo Nix and Sean Payton regarding this coming up at the top of the hour. I asked, can the Denver Broncos continue this? Is this sustainable? Can they go deep in the playoffs this way? This came in from Ben, lifelong Bronco fan. I'm going to tell you now that the Broncos are getting lucky, but if they keep up this current trend when they get into the playoffs, they're going to be one and done. They're not going to be able to do this against good playoff teams with tight defense. And I would agree with that because, and the way I put it yesterday is the teams, and just look at Buffalo and Kansas City, two teams that are still considered among the best in the NFL. Stack them however you want. They're still both very good teams. That game in Buffalo was a complete four-quarter game. Every drive, every play of that game mattered. And neither team had the ability to just kind of, and I'll tell you case in point, because the team that I thought stumbled a little bit, had some dry spells at times, was Kansas City. And even though the game was close in the end, it ultimately cost them. And those are the type of teams I think that Ben is referring to and that I'm looking at, the teams that comprise most of the playoff field, where the Denver Broncos can't just wake up in the fourth quarter. And I don't want to trigger anybody, but allow me to dip into the past of the Denver Broncos. Okay? This team is better than the team I'm about to reference. The quarterback is better than the quarterback I am about to reference. However, what happened? How did Tebow time end up? Right? First round of the playoffs, they go against Pittsburgh. What happens? Same formula worked. Pittsburgh couldn't put them away in the first three quarters. Couldn't take control of the game in the first three quarters. Tebow to Demaryius on to the next round. What happened with Belichick and the Patriots? That game was over before you settled into your seats. I could see that fate. Not to say everyone in the NFL playoffs could do that. It does depend on the matchup. But I see, looking into my crystal ball, this is the way that the Denver Broncos run this year will ultimately end. It will not be a heartbreaker, last-second field goal, anything like that. It will be a team putting them away through three quarters because the Broncos can't get anything going, and the fourth quarter is a moot point. That's what it will be. The question just becomes that we have to answer between now and then, how many of those teams exist? I think one of those teams is visiting Empower Field next week. We'll see if the Broncos, and what's nice about this matchup, and I don't want to look too far ahead, I don't want to succumb to the trap game that is the Raiders, but you're going to get locked in Kansas City. They're coming off of a bye week. They need this game. They need this game because they want to win the division. So this is not, you're catching the Chiefs when they got a 4-game lead and they're looking ahead to whatever. No, Chiefs are going to be 100% locked into the Denver Broncos, and that is great news. That is great news because this will be a real test for the Denver Broncos. If all of this can work against one of the best teams in the NFL. I think Buffalo is one of those teams. I think there are a couple on the NFC side. If you want to dream big about the Denver Broncos meeting an NFC team in the playoffs, which you know what that would mean. But that's kind of how I see it ending. And look, I think I just don't think this way of winning is going to work all the way to the Super Bowl. I just don't. So something will have to give. Either one, the Denver Broncos figure out quarters 1 through 3 between now and the playoffs, or they run into a team that can, even despite the Broncos' great defense, can put up numbers and put Bo Nix and the Broncos in too big of a hole for them to dig out in the fourth quarter. Houston wasn't that team. I think there are a few lurking out there. 719-24-7, 1313, more Drive Time Sports after this. Congrats to one Corey who scored himself a pair of tickets to see Tom Segura at the Broadmoor World Arena on Sunday. Give away some more tickets coming up in a little bit, but right now I want to welcome in a different Corey into the show. He is Corey Roldan of KKTV 11. No, go ahead. What? No, you did not win, Corey. Sorry.
I'm gonna be in Santa Fe Sunday anyway, so you know.
Oh, okay. So now all of a sudden you're going to be in Santa Fe.
Yeah, you know the Broncos play Thursday. You know I got to spend some time with the wife, so we go to Santa Fe after the Broncos game. By the way,
yeah,
my prediction before the season's looking pretty good.
What would that be, Corey?
The Broncos finish 12-5, win the AFC West. The Chiefs make the playoffs. Might go further than the Broncos in the playoffs, but do not win a division.
But how are they going to do that if they succumb to this trap game that is tomorrow night, Corey?
Against Geno Smith and the Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
Dude,
how trappy, but honestly, how trappy is this game? This is quite trappy. Not saying the Broncos will stumble, but it has all the elements of a trap.
Because of the injuries, it's trappy because it's a short week. But Geno Smith has been horrible. He's been so bad. The Broncos pass rush might win the game. That game, it's themselves. I'm serious. Like, let's look at Geno Smith's numbers real quick. Okay. He's been horrible this year. He has the same amount of touchdowns as interceptions. His QBR is 39 currently. Last week, he wasn't bad again. He had his best game against the Jags, but before that, against your Chiefs, he was 10 for 16 for 67 yards. He's had 3 games, 1, 2, 3, with more interceptions than touchdowns. I mean, look, I get the trap, but Geno they're just not a good football team. They're 2-6. They're 30th in the NFL in basically offense and defense. I look at this. If the Broncos run the football and they get pressure on Geno Smith, they're going to win the football game.
Well, then because you and I are in agreement on that. I just, more than anything else, I think this is a game where Sean Payton can really get on his players and talk to them about the records of teams on Thursday night after they carried a 3 or greater winning streak going into the game the week before, playing the 9-time defending division champion. Like, he will find all of those analytics to shove in the faces of his team. I think he's going to have them locked in. I don't think they came this far to be on the cusp of playing Kansas City and stub their toe against the Raiders.
They're also, like, Pat Bryant talking to him. He's pumped up about playing on Thursday night in those new, not new, the throwback uniforms, rocking those. So the team is excited. They're also excited because they didn't make any trades. They like the guys in that room. Talking to Troy Franklin, he said the same thing. RJ Harvey. So I think they'll be fine. I really do think the Broncos will be fine. I think they could win by double digits. Easy.
Corey Roldan of KKTV 11, my guest. To your point about the lack of movement at the trade deadline, I understand why the players would be geeked about that.
Yeah.
The message that it sends. But if you trust reporting on a national level, it's not like the Broncos weren't looking. Do you think there was a missed opportunity at the deadline?
What, Waddle? Yeah, it depends on what you give up. That's the thing. If you give up multiple, what would it be, a second round pick? Would it be?
No, and you're cutting right to the heart of the matter on it. Miami reportedly was asking for a first plus.
No. Yeah. That he's not worth that. He's a good player. He would fit in the Sean Payton offense. He would find ways, like, Marvin Mims' role would be diminished because a lot of those jet sweeps we see with Marvin, a lot of those screens, a lot of getting him the ball in space, that would be Waddle now. But do I think he's worth a first-round pick? No, I do not.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. And look, there are also the bigger picture here. I was just talking about this. You know, Colts kind of got to go all in. They got to pay Daniel Jones after this year. Jonathan Taylor's got next year
Two
left
first
on his
though.
deal. Huh?
Two first. The Jets got to steal with that. Two first. He's a good player, but do
But
I
it
think
but
he's worth 2 first-round picks?
but I say look at the alternative. So let's say that the Colts don't do this, okay, and they fall short of the Super Bowl because I'm guessing that's what
I
they're
still think
thinking
they're
in
going to fall.
Indianapolis. I think so too. But look, there's what you and I think outside, and there's the heightened belief in the building there in Indianapolis, and it occurs throughout the NFL. But what I'm saying is, when they don't make this move, they fall short. Okay. Now they got to make a decision on Daniel Jones, and he's not going to be cheap. Look at what Sam Darnold is making in Seattle.
Yeah.
And you have Jonathan Taylor coming up on an expiring deal after next season. Like, this is it for Indy. I get everything you're saying. I just think this is it for Indy. If they don't win it this year, and I don't think they will either, but if they don't, then I don't think it's going to happen for them at
Yeah.
all until with this roster that they have.
And we've seen this work out with several teams. Like the Rams went all in a couple of times and won a Super Bowl. I saw the Saints do it year after year and get pretty close. So I respect it. I also just think for the Jets standpoint, getting 2 first-round picks for a player that hasn't been as good as he was 2 years ago, and you get off of that contract is a pretty good deal for the Jets. I like this deal honestly more for the Jets than I do for the Colts, but I get why the Colts did it.
What did you make about Quinnen Williams' deal?
They got another first-round pick. I mean, they got a losing culture, and you need to start fresh. And the Cowboys traded Michael Parsons for 2 firsts, and they used one of those firsts to go get another defensive lineman, I guess. I don't know, man.
That trade, I respectfully disagree with you slightly on the Sauce Gardner thing, but the Quinnen Williams thing, I'm with you. I'm like, wait, what did they give up?
Yeah, I mean, the Jets have 5 first-round picks the next 2 years now. Now they have a terrible history of picking players. Actually, they kind of don't, because some of those players that they picked turned out to be stars, like Sam Darnold. But
not in New York, they don't.
That's what I'm saying. But eventually he got there, right? Well, once he left the disaster, that is the Jets. But you got 5 first-round picks in 2 years. You should be able to do something with that. And then you're going to have a high second-round pick as well. So you're going to have several top 40 picks the next 2 years to rebuild your franchise into what you actually want it to be. I like that for New York.
I do too. And I think the common theme here is whether it's the Broncos not making moves, the Colts making moves. We'll set Dallas aside because they kind of do their own thing all the time. And the Jets, it's like, where are you at in the stage of your franchise, in your franchise arc? Broncos have more runway with Bo Nix still on a rookie deal. Colts don't have that runway. The Jets are a rebuilding team. They have no use for Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams at this moment in time. So it's just all about where you are in that franchise arc. And I think on all three accounts, I think the Jets, the Broncos, and the Colts all made the right decision. Now, back to the Broncos and the bigger picture here. So you and I are in agreement, not going to stub their toe against the Raiders, and then it will be all on to Kansas City. Is this 3/4, because it was back to this against Houston, this 3/4 kind of mediocrity, if I may be a little critical of it, and this fourth quarter, explosion? Is this just who the Broncos are, and they are going to continue to be this team, at least for this season? Is this just who the Broncos are?
I think it is. Um, I think defensively they play well throughout the game. I think this is more on the offense, just
Sure.
not
Yeah.
having a rhythm, not finding a rhythm. I will say this: when the Broncos offense has a first or second drive and they score, like they did against the Bengals and the Cowboys, yes, two worst defenses in the NFL, they typically play better the rest of the game. You saw that against the
Mhm.
Colts. But when they don't, and they kind of just stalemate, they're waiting for Bo Nix to start playing off script in the fourth quarter. And that's when the team gets better because Bo is good when he gets off script. He's able to scramble. He's able to get out of the Sean Payton, methodically move the ball down the field that he wants, that he thinks this offense is, and it's not.
Mhm. So so I guess I would go back to your preseason prediction.
Uh,
You feel good about it in part because the Broncos are racking up wins, and kudos to you for seeing that.
I
But
also like the
with
way,
the falling a little bit short in the postseason or being out a little bit early, does the way they're playing kind of
yes.
keep you in that direction that this may not be a long playoff run for the Broncos?
100%, and it's just like to the fact that maybe they can win a game in the postseason, but this football team, I don't think, is able to make a deep run right now because they're so inconsistent offensively.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like you just see it every week. It's something different. It's either a big holding call that stops them from a long game. It's either a Cortland Sutton drop pass. It's either the offensive line's not getting good. Bo Nix, the offensive line's not creating enough holes or gaps with J.K. Dobbins, who's having a great year, by the way, or
Yeah.
Bo Nix not setting his feet. Just a little minute details. And then the fourth quarter, they're great. Um, so that kind of concerns me. I will say this: I also like them against the Chiefs. I think the Broncos are built to beat the Chiefs. Does that make sense? Just the way up front, the Broncos can win the line of scrimmage. That's where Denver is really good. That's where Sean Payton builds his teams. They're good on the defensive line and the offensive line, and they try to control the game that way. And last year, they should have swept the Chiefs. We saw them beat the Chiefs even 2 years ago at home. So that's also a reason why I like the Broncos to win the division because I do think they match up favorably against Kansas City compared to the Bills or the Chargers or any other team.
Right, because you have, if they're the players that are most concerning to you, it would be Chris Jones / George Karlaftis. It would be the pass rush of Kansas City. That's problematic for teams. Broncos have a good offensive line. Patrick Mahomes, also very problematic. You have the best pass rush in the NFL and an offense built that if Sean Payton sticks to it, that's my big question for next week, and we'll talk about it then. But
Yeah,
will he stick with it to keep Patrick Mahomes on the sideline? Because that's been that's
you
been the
have
way
to
you
run.
beat Kansas City the whole time. Either you have Josh Allen in the regular season anyway to be able to go up and down the field and put up points every time down, or you control the clock and keep Mahomes on the sideline.
It's also Ryan. Their game plan they had last year at Kansas City. Yes, they had a block field goal, but that game plan is the reason why they were in a position to win the football game. You run the football. J.K. Dobbins, I believe he's still top five in the NFL in rushing. R.J. Harvey, give him more touches. Tyler Bidet, I don't want to see another Tyler Bidet screen. I want to see RJ Hart. If you're going to do a screen to a running back, can it please be RJ Harvey? That kid's got some pop. But, anyways, you're right. You got to run the football. You got to win the time of possession. And then you get pressure on Patrick Mahomes, which the Broncos are the best pass rush in the NFL. And it's not even close. I believe the next closest team is 10 sacks away?
Yeah, it's
No, I think it's yes. No, 12. My apologies. The Broncos lead the NFL with 40 sacks this year. The next closest team is the Lions with 28.
that's crazy. That's that's an insane number.
Jonathan, and they're
Yeah.
they're also getting there, but they're also leading in like pressures with Zach Allen. They're also leading Jonathan Cooper as like the fastest get off, and then Nick Benito, who's been quiet the last 2 games, still has 8 sacks. His get off's incredible as well. They're also blitzing Talano Hufunga, Jade Baring. Those guys are good pass rush. So that's why that matchup, if you get pressure on Mahomes and you can control the ball, you have a chance to win the football game.
Well, first things first, Broncos got to keep this win streak going against Brock Bowers and the Raiders tomorrow night. What's on the docket for you, 5:30 and 10, Corey Roldan?
So 5:30, we're credit to Ryan Kaufman of Drive Time Sports. We got a little interview with the Switchbacks president we're showing. We also got a Denver Nuggets Heat preview. We're talking a little bit about the Broncos Raiders as well. Zach Allen, how good Zach Allen's been. Tomorrow, we got 2 whole segments, about 8 minutes at the end of the 5:30. We're live from Empower Field. Got a cool little intro I'm making right now with the 80s KKTV logo. Okay. So if the Broncos are throwing it back, Channel 11's throwing it back too, man.
There you go. It's not just tonight when Corey joins me on the show that you should be watching him. It's every single night on KKTV 11. Appreciate it, bud. Talk soon.
I appreciate you, my friend.
Yeah, you bet. Corey Roldan, outstanding work that he does over at KKTV 11. We'll stick with the Broncos coming up next because I want you to hear from both Sean Payton and Bo Nix about their level of worry now that we're back to our regularly scheduled programming of the Broncos not being able to do anything offensively through 3 quarters and wait into the 4th for some late game heroics. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in, hour 2 on this Wednesday. Glad to have you. Appreciate you watching the show on YouTube, or maybe you like another social media platform, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can find us at the same place in all of those different places at XTRA Sports 1300. While you're there, I would be eternally grateful if you liked, subscribed, followed, and told your friends. We thrive on word of mouth advertising around these parts. Shea Serrano will be joining me in the next segment. Chances are, if you don't follow him on Twitter, you probably see him on your feed. He has written a new book that I think is absolutely awesome. And I'm not just saying that because Shay's going to be on the program. I thought the book was awesome, and I wanted Shay on the program. Talking about the things that numbers can't measure in the game of basketball. Let Shay explain better his newest work of prose coming up in less than 20 minutes. Of course, the line is open for you to be my guest at 719-247-1313. So the Broncos, short week going up against the Las Vegas Raiders. My question is really not so much will the Broncos lose, and maybe I'm giving them the kiss of death here, but I don't think it's about losing. I'm more curious to see if this turns out to be more like the Bengals and the Cowboys game, or is this more like the Houston game, the Philly game, the New York game, so on and so forth. I think it's because it's a divisional game. Because it's a short week, I think it could be close. I think we may see the Denver Broncos follow a similar script. But as I said yesterday on the show, the vast majority of the teams in the NFL, if the game is close, I'll take the Broncos in the fourth quarter. Like, that's just, they've earned that much. I have my doubts about them as a Super Bowl contender and how far they can actually go with this. But right now, I mean, look at how often they've been able to replicate this. This is who they are. And the question is, can Sean Payton deal with it? Is Sean Payton okay with it? He was asked whether he's more happy about the way his team plays in the fourth quarter, or is it keeping him up at night, the fact that they can't produce on a regular basis quarters 1 through 3?
The focus, obviously, in starting fast, Dallas, for instance, but I think the key is just understanding how we win this game. What keeps you up is what's ahead. What keeps you up is, here's a short week. Am I going to get enough look at the red zone? Before practice, short yardage.
And I think this is, it's certainly, as Sean Payton said, looking ahead, worry about the next thing. Okay, this is done, on to the next thing. And when you do that, when you're always looking forward, maybe you don't get hung up on how, even though you got to learn from it, and Sean Payton has talked about this, like how important the day after is and how much work they put in on that day, the day after a game, or the first practice after a game, to try to correct some of the mistakes. I don't think Sean Payton is pleased with the way these games have gone. I'll say that. I don't think Sean Payton is in a position where he wants to rock the boat and wants to shake the confidence of his team by harping on the fact that they can't get the offense going in the first 3 quarters. I think he knows what I have intimated, what Ben texted about, that this is not conducive to going deep in the postseason. That you've got to be able to win in different ways, as in using all 4 quarters to try and find ways to win instead of just relying on the fourth quarter. I think Sean Payton is quietly, and he will never speak this out loud, I think he's a little bit worried about this. How could you not be? I mean, the wins are great. And look, fourth quarter, you can trust the Denver Broncos, but how could you not look at this current run of form and at least go, it would be nice if they could get going in the first 3 quarters, right? It would be a good thing. I think Sean Payton, and to think they're not working on it, like, of course they're working on it. Of course they're trying to make it better. But when you're on a 6-game winning streak and you've shown this ability to be clutch in the fourth quarter, it's like the positives right now are outweighing the negatives. But behind closed doors, I got to imagine that much of Sean Payton's preparations are about, we got to get going in the first 3 quarters. And I think there's probably a message behind the scenes being delivered to the players. But there's a lot of good going on right now, and you don't want to be too negative, especially when it comes to your quarterback, who is the poster child, obviously, for who the Broncos have become. Here's Bo Nix when asked about how they get going in the first 3 quarters.
If we can find a way not to have to play the number 1 defense in the league, that might help. But, they're trying to keep us from scoring at the same time we're trying to score. So it's not easy. And we found ways at times. And the good thing is we've fooled guys like you to believing that's easy at some point in the game.
And that's a good answer from Bo Nix, right? And the fact of the matter is the Houston Texans are, in terms of points per game allowed, one metric, the best defense in the NFL. And there's a little bit of humor in there with Bo Nix. So he knows how to handle all of this. But look, we're not just talking about the Houston game, are we? Like, that's a convenient place for Bo Nix to go. But really, and he knows this, the question is about the last month and a half. It's not about just Houston. Because while the Houston Texans, number 1 in the NFL in points allowed, Philly is 19th. New York Jets are 27th. New York Giants are 28th. And the Broncos could not do anything or much of anything. For the Jets game, they didn't do much of anything the entirety of the game. But with the Giants and the Eagles, it was the fourth quarter. And those teams are not nearly as good in terms of limiting the opposing scoring the way that the Texans are. So this is not just about Houston, and Bo Nix knows that. This has become their identity. And unless they are playing the 2 worst teams in the NFL in terms of points allowed, Cincinnati and Dallas, every game is following this formula. And the teams they will meet in the postseason, and a couple of the teams, let's not forget about another matchup with LA. I know there's a lot of worry right now with the Chargers now that both Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater are out for the season, or I should say that the other way around because Rashawn Slater was hurt first. I know this Charger team that they're going to face in a few weeks isn't the team that maybe they were when the Broncos last played them. Washington is kind of a mess right now, and now Jaden Daniels is hurt again. But they do this with regularity regardless of the opponent. The only exceptions to the rule, that is the Denver Broncos, are the absolute two worst defenses in the NFL. That's it. Everybody else, if you're ranked 28th or better, this is how the Broncos play you. This is how Broncos games will go. So that also leads me in the direction of, hey, I think the Raiders game could be closer than some people think. But I trust the Broncos to win that kind of a game. But there are a small list of teams that I would not, because I think there are some teams that require you to be on your game, to be productive for 4 quarters. And it should be that way, right? If you are going to be named champion of the world, if you're going to win that, you should be a complete team. And there are exceptions to that rule. The last Broncos Super Bowl team was an exception to that rule. But you want to bank on being the exception to the rule, or do you want to try and follow the rule? If the Broncos are going to go deep in the playoffs, they must find a way to get the offense going quarters 1 through 3. They just have to. They're not going to be able to do this all the way to the Super Bowl. And I think that there is a way. I'm not saying this of the Denver Broncos and going, well, there's no way they can. I think at least there's a way they can give it a shot. And it's based on the game plan. It's based on when Sean Payton has more control over what the Broncos do, especially those first 15 plays or however many it is, that's opening script that all coaches have. It starts there, but it even bleeds into the second quarter and a little bit into the third. I know you want to leave well enough alone. And I think I don't want to make this sound like it's easy to do this, right? Something's been working. Do you want to completely change what you're doing? But it is abundantly clear that in the fourth quarter, it's a very different mindset and a very different looking Broncos team because of that mindset. And it would be worth it at some point for Sean Payton to give it a try. The problem is, I don't know when in his mind he will ever have that thought. It's not going to be the Kansas City game. You're not going to experiment and try some things with Kansas City. I don't think he's going to do it on a short week. I mean, I wonder after the bye week, maybe keep going this way the next 2 weeks, go into the bye week and really kind of look over everything and have that additional time and come out against Washington, which is a defense that, while they're not as bad maybe as the Bengals and the Cowboys, I mean, they're down there. It's not easy. It's not easy to change your mentality and change what you're doing when it is working like it has been. But there's a bigger picture here, and at some point, the only way that the Broncos are going to fulfill that bigger picture is if there's a change to make the rest of the game look more like the fourth quarter. And I don't think it's all mentality from the players, right? It's not all that clutch gene or whatever you want to call it. It's also very much how plays are called, what is emphasized, What are the Broncos trying to do quarters 1 through 3 as opposed to what they do in the fourth quarter, which is by any means necessary? That's what the fourth quarter is. By any means necessary. Broncos at some point got to showcase that by any means necessary mentality. And then maybe we can recalibrate things on this Denver Broncos team. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts. Coming up next, Shea Serrano on his new book and what analytics cannot measure in the beautiful game of basketball. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. My next guest is terrific at what he does. Perhaps you are introduced to his work in 140 character bite-sized segments, but I'm telling you, the more Shea Serrano gets to write, the better it gets. And his latest work of prose is no different. It is called Expensive Basketball, and I understand it has just been named to the bestseller list. Shea Serrano, first of all, appreciate your time and congratulations.
Yeah, baby. I'm feeling real good right now, sir. I'm feeling real good.
As you should. Let's first, I want to talk about the title, Expensive Basketball, where it come from.
Expensive Basketball, the title is in reference to this feeling that you get that nobody sort of needs to explain it to you. You just understand it. The hypothetical that I propose in the beginning of the book is that were somebody to show you a video of Ray Allen shooting a jump shot and somebody to show you a video of Joakim Noah shooting a jump shot. And they were like, hey, which of these two is more expensive? Which feels more expensive? No other explanation. I'm not going to explain anything else. I'm just going to ask you that question. You would know in your heart, in your spirit, in your soul, for some reason, the Ray Allen video is the correct answer. You wouldn't know why you know it or how you know it. You would just know that you know it. That's what expensive basketball is. Sometimes you watch a thing happen on the basketball court and it just feels important. It does something to you, and that's what it is.
Is Shea Serrano anti-analytics?
I am not. The book is not a refutation of stats. What the book proposes is that anytime a stat is used in a like a non-professional context, I'm not Daryl Morey trying to field a team that will score as efficiently as possible. So when I talk about what I care about in basketball, it doesn't have anything to do with like player efficiency ratings or win shares or box plus minus. It has to do with a feeling that I have that I can only get playing basketball. I think everybody feels the exact same way, and the way that I prove it is if you were to think about your favorite basketball memory. Let's go back just a couple of seasons, a season or two. Let's go back to Jamal Murray hitting the game winner in the playoffs over Anthony Davis. Remember this moment?
I do.
When he let that ball go, nobody in Denver was thinking, if that ball goes in, he's going to be 9 for 17 from the field. And nobody was thinking of a number when that ball was in the air. You were just thinking, heck yes, please go. Like it drops in, you're filled with elation, you're filled with excitement. You can talk about numbers afterward, but the first thing, the most important thing is that feeling that you get. And that's what the book is. That's why it's here.
Shea Serrano, my guest. Do we have just collectively a problem when it comes to Nikola Jokic in that regard? Do we focus too much on the numbers that he puts up and we don't appreciate what it looks like? I mean, the guy basically gave Domantas Sabonis a haircut the other night. I feel like, right. Yeah. And look, I talk about Nikola Jokic every day, and inevitably I get fixated on the numbers, but there's a beauty to the way that Nikola Jokic plays that I worry. I tell myself, like, am I getting too hung up on the fact that he only had 7 rebounds the other night instead of just appreciating what I saw?
No, I don't think so, because with the Joker, anytime somebody mentions his numbers, it's always in service of this other thing. It's always like, I'm telling you this because I want you to understand how impressive this is. I have this like rule that I make for myself where anytime there's a basketball player who I'm interested in, I need to go see him in person. And so a couple of years ago, when the Joker was like on this is pre-title. Remember the year the Spurs and the Nuggets played in the playoffs?
I do.
Okay, it was that season. And I was like, all right, I need to go see this guy in person because he's kind of destroying everybody that he plays against, and I want to see what it looks like in real life. So my cousin and I went, and we sat down. Maybe there was like 6 or 7 rows from the court. I was trying to get as close as possible to this moving mountain that y'all have as a basketball player. And I'm watching him on the court, just like, keep in mind, I'm a Tim Duncan fan. That's my guy. So I'm used to like a big guy moving, like manipulating inches as like a form of mastery. And I'm watching him do that. And like, you don't even think about it while he's doing it. He's just doing it the whole game. And then I look up at the like Jumbotron, and he's got like a 40-point triple double. I didn't even see it happen. I just watched him move an inch here and move an inch there and hold the ball here instead of it. And it's unbelievable. So anytime you mention a number with regard to Joker, it's always in service of like his own greatness, which I think is totally fine. Like, that makes sense to me.
Shea Serrano, my guest. Would I be too presumptuous in saying that maybe the passage in the book about Tim Duncan would be the favorite one that you wrote?
Yeah, that would be an incorrect thing. Tim Duncan's my favorite basketball player, and I love writing about him. I've written about him a couple of times in like a column for The Ringer or something like that, right? But this is the first chapter dedicated to him. But my favorite chapter in there is the one about Michael Jordan, because it's so decidedly nerdy. Because it's almost impossible to write about Michael Jordan in a way that hasn't been written about already. Like, I'm sitting in my office right now. I've got 5 books about Michael Jordan, like different part. Like, I've got the Sam Smith Jordan Rules book, and the Michael Leahy When Nothing Else Matters Washington Wizards book. Like, all his whole entire career is covered. So trying to figure out a way to write about him that hadn't been done yet, I was very excited with that one, with the way that one turned out.
Where do you think we're going in this? Jordan has popped up with these, I don't know, sit down things with Mike Tirico. I don't know about you. I thought he was going to be an analyst. I thought he was going to be breaking down games, but I guess not. Where do you think that conversation with Jordan and LeBron goes in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think that conversation will always exist until all of the people like me and you who grew up watching Jordan, like once they're all gone, then he'll slowly start to fade a little bit, and LeBron will become like the unquestioned greatest of all time. Right now, it's always those two. Those are the two guys. They're super far ahead of everybody else, 1 and 2, and that becomes like, who did you watch during your most pivotal basketball formative years? And that's gonna be the person you argue as the greatest ever.
Back to Jokic. Where is he currently for you right now in the pantheon of greats, and where do you think he ends up?
Oh my God. Okay, so if we're just talking like a modern day player, I think he is right. I think right now he's the second best player in the league. I think you have to give it to SGA just because of what happened in the playoffs, right? You got to say, okay, you're the guy right now. Prior to last season, it was Joker's league for a couple of years. Now he's number 2. I think he's going to be 1 or 2 for the next, I don't know, 4 years or something like that. Just because of the way he plays, he's going to be able to do that for a couple of more seasons. The all-time conversation becomes really interesting really quickly, because he did it so quietly that you sort of have to go like, well, he can't be any lower than, like, if we're talking centers, he can't be any lower than like 4th or 5th. Like, that's the baseline, right? And then it becomes like, well, shoot, how do we measure him against Shaq? How do we measure him against Wilt? I think he's such an interesting, fascinating basketball player. I don't know what the rest of his career is going to look like. It would be great if he snuck another championship in there, but I think just getting the one automatically solidifies him as, like, top 20 all time kind of guy at worst.
Shea Serrano, what is your thought on Wemby and everything that he is? Because I feel like at some point, if you write a sequel to this, Wemby's you're going to have something Wemby related in here, not just maybe because of your affinity for that franchise, perhaps, or a big man in San Antonio history, but just because it's inevitable that there's some lore about Victor Wembanyama at some point.
I pray that you're correct. I pray this ascension that he's been on, season 1, he gets to the league. There's no real basketball expectations on him other than just go out there on an NBA court and be like part of the league. Year 2 starts, he's on his way toward becoming Defensive Player of the Year before he has to sit down because of the deep vein thrombosis. This was the first season where there was like basketball expectations attached to his name. Like, all right, we should be a playoff team, right? And if we're not a play like that became the baseline for him. He said it himself in one of the interviews. He's like, I want to be at worst a 6 seed. I don't want to be any lower than that. So he's already establishing that. But to see him come out and play the way that he did, he has a 40-point game game one against the Mavericks, where he just sort of dominates the entirety of the court over the course of 29 minutes. And then he is like, his first 5 games were just unbelievable. And it felt like all of the stuff people were saying he could be, we're starting to now see him become those things. We watched him in the offseason go hang out with the Monks and hang out with Kevin Garnett and Jamal Crawford. And it's like everything we watched him do in the offseason, he has incorporated it into his. I watched him go behind the back, through the legs, bringing the ball up court like very Jamal Crawford. I watched him do a 360 layup the other day for no real reason other than I'm going to do it. This is a 7'5" guy. Like the delivery of the promise of talent that we're seeing at the beginning of the season it's extremely exciting.
Yeah. And here locally, it's like we tried to make Embiid versus Jokic a thing. We tried to make this, it for obvious reasons, it just never worked out. And then you turn around and it's like, well, wait, we got Jokic and Wemby. And I can't wait to see the two of them battle time and time again over the next few years. And maybe in the postseason, because I'm with you. I think San Antonio is kind of like this year's version of the Rockets, what they were last year. I think they're going to make a quantum leap. I think we're going to look at them in the top 3 in the West and go, how'd that happen? And maybe we see Jokic and Wemby for 7 games.
Wait, hold on. Top 3. Okay, OKC automatic. They're in there.
Correct.
Houston, KD and Şengün look incredible together. That's terrifying to me. They're going to be up there. You guys are not in the top 3 in the West?
Well, maybe I'll loosen it and say top 4. I'm just saying near the top of the West, going from. All right, you got me. All right, because I'm not moving out the Nuggets with the addition of Jonas Valanciunas, which may be the most significant pickup for a team in years. So Jokic can finally rest. But I want to see it. So whatever we have to do, whatever seeds both of those teams have to be, let's get it done, Shea Serrano. I know you have the power to make this happen.
I would love for that. I would love to. This is what ideal scenario. OKC number 1, Spurs number 2, so we don't have to see them until the Western Conference Finals. Denver number 3, Houston number 4. Spurs. No, wait, I got spun around. Yeah.
See, now you're coming over to my thought, Shay. Now you're like, you know what? Spurs top 3. No.
Hold on a second. Mm-hmm. I'm right there with you.
Yeah. So it'd be Spurs. Yeah, it was Spurs would have to be, or maybe they drop a little bit lower to 3-6 matchup, maybe.
I'll take it. I would love to see another Denver Spurs series. I think getting to play potentially 7 games against the Joker, like back to back, like concurrently, would only be an incredible experience for Wemby, because he's going to siphon so much from him in that way. I would love to see that.
Yeah, and I think Jokic, to your point, Jokic is one of those players that I think and all the greats do this. They crave getting the best out of their opponent. And I think he said some things about Wemby, like he's trying to almost in a low-key way kind of urge him forward, kind of like, keep going, young fella, because I want to be able to match up with you. But you mentioned Şengün, don't forget about him. That dude was crazy at the Euros. And he's going to be a lot of fun this year. Well, this book, Shay, was terrific. So thank you for writing it. Congratulations on a well-deserved honor being on the bestseller. The book is expensive. Basketball. Get it wherever fine books can be found. Shea Serrano, let's do this again sometime, huh?
Bring me back when the Spurs and the Nuggets play.
All right. We'll do, Shay. Got your number. We'll talk then, buddy. Thanks.
I appreciate you.
Yep, you too. That is Shea Serrano. Terrific writer. On the stream here. Messing up the stream. Anyway, I'm going to a break anyway. That's not a big deal. But again, if you're on the stream, here's the book. Expensive Basketball. One he wrote about, and look, with the Jokic connection, I did thoroughly enjoy the Tim Duncan passage in the book. But yeah, just kind of I know he said, Shea Serrano said he's not anti-analytics, and I'm not either. I just think in all sports, we've gotten too fixated on them and not letting them be a part of the story. We make them the story. And there are all these other things that go into any sport. I mean, this happens to be basketball, but it's any sport that are just fun to watch. I mean, one thing, so the Duncan thing was good. Also, he has a chapter in here about Jason Williams. And I have to say that one, if it's not Nuggets related, and then obviously there's a Jordan tier, right? All the stuff that Jordan and those Bulls did. But I cannot recall, outside of those two things, which I had a very vested interest in, I can't remember having more fun watching basketball than when Jason Williams burst onto the scene. And there's a whole chapter about white chocolate, Jason Williams. Those Kings teams were fun. You know, we call it a league pass team now, right? You have your team that you're going to watch all the time regardless, and then there's a team that maybe they're not necessarily a title contender, although the Kings obviously were butting up against the Lakers for many years, but just a team that you're like, okay, outside of my team, this is the team I want to see the most of. Those Kings teams with Jason Williams were absolutely that. He wrote about that as well. Also, more recent, Steph in the Olympics. So, highly recommend. Expensive basketball, available everywhere now, and a ton of people are picking it up. Shea was pumped. He literally, he told me when I called him that he just received word that he was on the bestseller list. So that tells you definitely one you should pick up. 719-247-1313. Back after this. Comedian Tom Segura will be at the Broadmoor World Arena this Sunday at 7 p.m. with his Come Together tour that has been selling out across the world. Because they do that. They travel outside of the United States, but Tom Segura is going to be here on Sunday. If you would like to go, a pair of tickets will go to the 13th texter to text comedy and their name to 719-247-1313. If you're looking for something to do on Sunday, be a good idea. Big time comedian coming through our neck of the woods. Check him out. The Colorado Rockies are either getting ready for the most revolutionary thing that has happened since Billy Beane in Moneyball, or they are getting ready for the most epic disaster in the history of the franchise, and that is saying something. The Colorado Rockies have been conducting their interviews for the head of their baseball operations. Two candidates that they have recently spoken to. One of them is Matt Foreman, who is in the Guardians front office, smaller market team. They stay competitive. Dick Monfort has gone to that organization in the past for an executive. And also Emil Sade, who is the assistant GM with the Diamondbacks. Okay, two Diamondbacks were just in the World Series not that long ago. They are the team in the... Look, if the Rockies are trying to model themselves after anybody in their division, it should be Arizona. Right? Because they can't be the Dodgers. Very few teams can. The Giants and the Padres are in a different stratosphere in terms of the way that they operate or can operate. It's funny how the Padres keep getting in there because you wouldn't think that they could be this team that is, constantly buying and spending a ton of money on free agents. Maybe just shows you that when you have an owner with other interests, financial interests outside of the organization, maybe they have some extra disposable income. But if there's one team in the division that the Rockies can look at and say, maybe we could do that, it's Arizona. So I look at those, and neither one of them are going to make you run to the box office and purchase your season tickets. But you're like, okay, this makes sense. They're fishing in the right ponds. Both of those guys have left Denver and reportedly are not going to be taking the job. Enter Adam Ottavino. Yes, that Adam Ottavino, former Rockies pitcher. He is now the name in this search. There is no one else. Foreman and Sade, unless the Rockies circle back with them, they're out. Adam Ottavino. And you may say, oh, what front office is he working for? None front office. The guy was just pitching like last year. Wasn't he with the Yankees last year? Adam Ottavino, not a baseball executive, is now the leading candidate to take over the entire baseball operations of the Colorado Rockies. So you may say, well, Ryan, why is that they're getting ready for the most revolutionary thing done since Billy Beane's Moneyball or an epic disaster? This seems to have disaster written all over it. Here is why. And I'm leaning in the same direction you are. Don't get me wrong. But this puzzle that is Coors Field, this puzzle that is pitching at Coors Field, Adam Ottavino, I don't want to say he solved it, but I mean, on the all-time ERA list, it's Brian Fuentes and it's Adam Ottavino in the history of the Rockies. So while nobody has figured it out, one guy that has, maybe the correct way to put it is, survived and did not have his baseball career completely ruined by his stay in Colorado, Adam Ottavino would be one of them. And the great irony in all of this, or maybe it's not ironic given how you know the Rockies to operate, the reason why Adam Ottavino was able to survive Coors Field is because he did something that the Rockies said they didn't want him to do. He went outside the organization for help. That drive line that you heard so much about, right? Trevor Bauer went there, and it's become like the biggest thing now for pitchers. The Rockies didn't want him to do that because that's analytics, and analytics bad. And that plays into my conversation I just had with Shea Serrano. This is not about being anti-analytic. This is about not being beholden to them. This is about letting it be a piece of what you do, but not the be-all, end-all. Having some feel for the game. But the problem is the Rockies are all feel for the game and no analytics. So if they're serious about making Adam Ottavino the head of their baseball operations, I got to imagine that they're embracing to a degree analytics. Right? Because then Adam Ottavino would just walk out. The Rockies, unlike every other baseball team is like, how about a little less analytics? A little bit more feel for the game. Right? And then here on the other end of the spectrum, here are the Rockies, where it's like, for God's sakes, try some analytics. Well, now here's an incredibly analytically driven player that is showing interest in this job. I mean, if he ends up getting it, at least he has to have some assurance that the Rockies are going to enter the 21st century. So that in and of itself is a move in the right direction. But either this guy, armed now with analytics, having been one of the more successful pitchers in Rockies history, he may be their best shot to crack the code. Because when I initially saw it, I was like, this is dumb. This guy has never held a front office position. The guy walked off a mound 10 minutes ago, and you're going to hire him to undertake one of the greatest undertakings in baseball history to try and fix the Colorado Rockies. This is nonsense. You need to grab somebody like a Matt Foreman or an Emil Sade, who at least knows what it looks like, knows what a good organization looks like. But the more I think about it, and I'm not guaranteeing success by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm saying I'm talking myself into the hire. I am. I feel a little bit like Ryan Howard on The Office. Like, I want an outsider. Like, maybe there's something to this. to just grab a guy who, as a player, was incredibly analytically driven, who has familiarity with Coors Field and the difficulties, some institutional knowledge. I mean, you can't have the complete package. This would be the Rockies doing a very Rockies thing and saying, let's hire within the family, but this doesn't feel like it's completely inside the family. That would be promoting their the GM of the Isotopes. This feels like just the right blend of a candidate that you could see the Rockies being okay with, but also being enough of an outsider, having gone out and experienced the whole wide world of baseball. I don't know. I will never believe that the Rockies are going to figure this thing out until they do. You think I have been too hesitant to buy into the Denver Broncos? Like the Rockies have to maybe be up 3-0 in the World Series for me to go like, I think they may have figured it out. And even then, not so much, because they did go to the World Series and were completely fraudulent. I don't know what it's going to take for me to believe that the Rockies have figured it out. But this feels like a little bit of disruption. We just had a manager hired by the San Francisco Giants from college. It never happened before. And this idea, like, look, you have the ultimate Goliath in your backyard, in your division. There is nothing that the Dodgers can't do. They can outspend you. They are smarter than you. Dave Roberts is now considered a very good manager when there were some questions about him early on. They can do everything. So what do? You try something that the Dodgers would, even though they have a corner on every advantage that you could possibly have in baseball, if you can find something that even they haven't tried, maybe that's the way to go. And I think that's the thinking of Buster Posey in San Francisco with hiring Vitello, the manager of the Tennessee Volunteers. And I think it could be this with Dick Monfort's son. Because remember, it's not Dick Monfort necessarily who's making the decision. I'm not naive to think that he won't have a say, but he's trying to empower his son. And if he was going to empower someone that wasn't himself, it would be his son. I mean, you have to work within certain parameters with the Colorado Rockies. Like, as long as Dick Monfort is there are certain parameters that are always going to be in place. But this Adam Ottavino thing, I guess where I'm at is I don't know if it's going to work, and I don't even think it's going to work. But I'm talking myself into it being worth a try. Right? Isn't it with the Rockies? Aren't the only bad ideas the ones that they keep cycling through? The ones they've already had? This seems like a new idea. I'm kind of on board with it. And what's the downside? The Rockies are, the worst team in baseball. They already are there. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on that. The three stories that are driving the show are next. Hello there. Glad to have you. Hour 3 on this Wednesday. Appreciate you listening on air, online, or through the app, or watching on our social media platforms. Pick one at XTRA Sports 1300. If you would like to interact with the program, I am here for that. 719-247-1313. You could call or text into the show, or if you're on our social media platforms, you can go ahead and comment right there. Coming up tonight, Nuggets and Heat. That game will tip off shortly after 7 o'clock right here on Extra Sports 1300. In the meantime, here are the 3 stories that are driving the show. All right, story number 1. We're back to our regularly scheduled Broncos programming. Here's Bo Nix.
If we can find a way not to have to play the number 1 defense in the league, that might help. But, they're trying to keep us from scoring at the same time we're trying to score. So it's not easy, and we found ways at times. And the good thing is we've fooled guys like you to believing that's easy at some point in the game.
That is Bo Nix talking about the continued struggles for the Broncos offense, quarters 1 through 3, as opposed to quarter 4. And I do like that answer a lot from Bo Nix, but he knows as well as you do that when we're talking about the Broncos not producing through 3 quarters, we're not just talking about the Houston game. Yeah, they're the number 1 defense. That was probably not the game to go, hey, can the Broncos figure all of this stuff out? But unless they're the worst 2 defenses in the league, Cincinnati and Dallas, Broncos can't seem to do it. Philadelphia is not ranked number 1. They're not even in the top 10 this year in defense. Broncos couldn't score into the 4th quarter against them. Giants and the Jets are in the high 20s. And the Broncos couldn't do much of anything against either one of those defenses, and especially the Giants until the 4th quarter. This is bigger than just the Houston game. And it's just who they are. Because you can say that, hey, Sean Payton needs to blend his game plan with what Bo Nix does well, and I get it, and I am with you. Part of me saying this is who the Broncos are is because do you expect Sean Payton to do that? Like, we can keep going back and forth, and we have been, because this is who the Broncos have been, except for that one Cincinnati game and that one Dallas game. And even if they're that way tomorrow night, are you going to go all is fixed because the Broncos did it against the Raiders? You and I can have this discussion until we're both blue in the face. He's not going to change. He's not. Because he wants it done a certain way. And the Broncos have been successful every step of the way when they follow Sean Payton's plan in terms of wins and losses. Right? And you do see improvement. It's not like they've been stuck in this rut. This, if you even want to call it a rut, but this mode, the way they go about their business, the way they're performing, actually is progress. If you're really thinking about it, because remember how the Denver Broncos in the 4th quarter, it wasn't good? Like all of last year, and the Indy game and the Chargers game, there is progress. The Broncos are improving. But to me, this is the latest, if you want to call it a hurdle, that they got to get over, is the fact that they can't do anything against any halfway decent defense in the NFL for 3 quarters. And then they look like world beaters in the 4th quarter. They used to not even be able to do it in the fourth quarter. So again, progress. But I just don't see, I think we all know what it is. We all know what is keeping the Denver Broncos from potentially producing quarters 1 through 3. Because the more control Sean Payton has relinquished in terms of the script, the game plan, the play calling, as the game goes on, the Broncos get better. Everyone can see this. But Sean Payton does not want to relinquish that control for a 4-quarter game. And in some way, you can kind of see where he's coming from. Right? Because they've won 6 in a row. Right on schedule, just like last year. September, a bit of a mixed bag. October, here we go. Even with those frustrations that you must have if you're a Broncos fan, you can recognize that the Denver Broncos, even with that, have been a wildly successful football team this year. They're tied for the best record in the conference. But I agree with you. Until that happens where Sean Payton just surrenders and says, I'm going to use my intellect to create more of a game plan that is tailored to what Bo Nix does well, and what Bo Nix is the extra gear that he has using his legs. Until that day comes, the Denver Broncos are limited. There is a cap. There is a ceiling. There are teams in the NFL that will punish this. Because there will come a time when the Denver Broncos are required to be working on both sides of the football for 4 quarters. That they won't be able to just survive until the 4th. And it will be their downfall. It's just a matter of when, not if. First round of the playoffs, conference title game, Super Bowl. You can fill in that blank. But it will be the reason why the Denver Broncos at least fall short of winning the Super Bowl. If your expectations are even that lofty. But it will be their demise. I can see it. But part of this being who they are is Sean Payton being who he is. And I just don't see how he's going to surrender and relinquish control and just say, let's do whatever Bo wants. No, he drafted Bo Nix because of how he thought Bo Nix would fit what he wanted to do. And I think he's still trying to get that out of Bo Nix. But every week that passes where it's the same script, even in a Broncos win, it just becomes more and more apparent that the only real way that the Broncos have a chance to remove that ceiling, and there's no guarantee that it'll work, but it's clear that the only way they could possibly do that is if Sean Payton completely, for 4 quarters, leans into what this offense, particularly his quarterback, do well. Let's move to hockey for story number 2.
Shoots it ahead. Ross Colton in space. Colton, right side circle. Backhander. Scores! His second of the season. It comes against his former squad. It's Ross Colton. It's 3-1 Avalanche.
Connor McGahey on the call. You heard it right here on Extra Sports 1300. The Avs, in a rematch of the 2022 Stanley Cup Final, beat the Tampa Bay Lightning 3-2. Ross Colton revenge game, scoring what proved to be the difference in the game there on that goal. But what last night was for the Avs was I think it was a victory for Chris McFarland because it was really the depth that this Avs team has that pulled them through. It was honestly kind of a rare, very rare night off for the big guns. Scoring the goals last night, Ross Colton and Victor Olofsson had 2 of them. Sam Malinsky played tremendously well last night. Last night was a victory for the Avs' depth. It wasn't just Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar and Marty Necas go win us this game. It was the bottom 6. It was the third D pairing. It was Scott Wedgwood right back in goal after a lackluster debut on the season for Mackenzie Blackwood against his former team this weekend. But it's also a win for what the Avs have added, right? Victor Olofsson would be in that if there was a Venn diagram, right? Ross Colton remains, but he's a depth piece. Victor Olofsson is a depth piece, but he's also new. And then the thing that really sparked the Colorado Avalanche last night was Gabriel Landeskog getting in a fight. The Avs did not look good. First shot on goal, boom, Tampa with the lead. And then Gabriel Landeskog, and I appreciate his candor on TNT. He was like, "Hey, if I'm not scoring goals, the least I can do is fight a guy." Paraphrasing. But that was the captain. Right? And that's part of all of this, is that having Gabriel Landeskog adds to that depth. And even though it wasn't Gabriel Landeskog scoring goals, ultimately he was the catalyst to get the Avs locked into that game, and they pushed forward with one of their better wins of the season. Tampa was playing great hockey coming into that game. And oh, by the way, because I know we got to chart these things now. Avs, 1 for 4 on the power play. Against one of the best power play units, penalty kill units, I should say, in the NHL. Not bad. 1 out of 4. Good win last night for the Avs. And I won that I think Chris McFarland was smiling a little bit wider, because it was the depth of the Colorado Avalanche that allowed them to beat. I know Tampa got off to a slow start, but what I think is one of the top contenders to get out of the East and play in the Stanley Cup final. 3-2 your final. Let's go back to football for story number 3. A report out today that Deion Sanders stripped play calling duties from Pat Shurmur. And if you're a Buffaloes fan, you will say this is long overdue, and I would agree with you. We have been talking about Pat Shurmur all season and last season. This is absolutely a long overdue change. Here's the problem. Deion did it before the Arizona game, and CU got crushed again. And they benched not one quarterback, Caden Salter, but 2 quarterbacks and Ryan Staub before finally letting Julian Lewis play the rest of the way. And oh, by the way, Julian Lewis is going to be the Buffs starter this weekend and the final 2 games of the regular season. With Caden Salter healthy, where you at in the chat? Julian Lewis starting a football game this weekend with a healthy Caden Salter. Deion Sanders has pulled the ripcord. It's on to Julian Lewis, and it's on to another play caller. I believe this is 4 for him now. But now this is everything. Julian Lewis being the quarterback now of the Colorado Buffaloes is everything. Because if this doesn't work, the best high school recruit in his class, not named Bryce Underwood, if he can't get, and I'm not talking about the last 3 games. What you need to see out of the last 3 games is that Julian Lewis can play at this level, right? And gives you some excitement going into next year. But if this doesn't work with Julian Lewis, I don't know what's going to work in Boulder. I really don't. But a way that Deion Sanders can help it work, he's got to figure out what to do on the offensive side of the football with his play caller. This has to stop. And they let the tight ends coach call plays, and it was just as bad. If I'm a Buffs fan, I would worry that Deion Sanders cannot find talent in coaches. Because I don't know that he's hit on one yet. But he has to. He has to find one. Whether it's soliciting outside help, whether it's saying I'm not going to look to guys I played with and against in the NFL, I think that would be a really good start. I mean, I would love to work with all my buddies too, but are they the best people for the job? Deion has to get this right. He has to get it right with Julian Lewis, and he has to get it right with the guy that's calling plays for Julian Lewis. Julian Lewis finally named the starter of the Colorado Buffaloes this weekend against West Virginia. 3 games left in what has been a lost season. But they could get something out of it if Julian Lewis shows some signs. And then you go out this offseason and whatever you got to figure out to be able to get the right guy calling plays, you got to do it. 719-24-7, 1313, more Drive Time Sports after this. Taking your thoughts on the day's topics, a programming note. It's that time of year again, and the Air Force women's basketball season is a bit crazy to begin this season up in Denver on Monday. I'll be flying out to South Dakota tomorrow to call a game on Friday, and then I am going out to Oregon for a game Monday night. Then it calms down a little bit. But why I say all that is it will be our last get-together for the week. So if you got something to say it now, or you got to wait till Monday. 719-247-1313. Or you could hit me up on the gram at Mart Sean on the Buffs demoting or stripping play calling duties from Pat Shurmur. I guess you could say that's a demotion in a way. But says, very long overdue to boot Pat Shurmur. Prime's team is stuck with his offense until next season. And that's a good point, Sean, because, look, Bartolone, the tight ends coach, like, is he going to transform the offense overnight? No. But it just, this idea that you get rid of Pat Shurmur as a play caller, that things might be better, well, they weren't. But it's a great point by Sean. You know, you're not going to completely transform. Maybe there's some new ideas. I don't know that you could see any with Arizona pummeling CU the way they did. But maybe in these last three games, maybe with Julian Lewis. I think the job description is as follows. Okay? Not so focused on wins and losses at this point. Just get Julian Lewis to the finish line looking like there's something there. A couple of flashes. A win would be great. But just like show that there's something. Because it's not a guarantee that Julian Lewis is going to be the guy. But it's going to be very rare that CU is going to get a top recruit. It just is. They were 38th in recruiting class. It's just not the way that Deion Sanders rolls. It's not the way this program rolls. So this idea that if Julian Lewis doesn't work, oh, it's okay. We'll just go back and get one of the best three quarterbacks in high school football next year. No guarantee of that. Jordan Seaton looks kind of like an outlier more than just what CU normally does. And there's still value to it. You look at the college football playoff rankings that were released last night. 4 of the top 5 teams were also 4 of the teams in the field were among the 5 best recruiting classes, high school recruiting classes. I think in order to be ultimately successful in college football, you got to look at it like the NFL. High school recruiting is the draft. Transfer portal is free agency. The core of your team has to be built through the draft. And we're seeing it. We're seeing the results. Not every team that has a great recruiting class is playing well. Like look at how Miami has fallen off, and they had one. They were the only one of the 5 best recruiting classes this past year that is not in the current college football playoff field. So it's not. There's no foolproof way of going about this. But now that we have more data and more of a sample size, it does look like it would behoove teams to not completely build their roster through the transfer portal. But with Julian Lewis, with Jordan Seaton, that's not what the Buffs did. They went into the high school ranks and got these guys, and credit to them. Not a single person said that the Buffs messed up by getting Julian Lewis. But as we have seen with a certain famous or a quarterback from a famous family, doesn't always translate to be a top high school recruit. But that's what makes it so much more important that whatever Deion Sanders needs to do in order to make sure that the next play caller he hires is the right guy, he's got to do it. So the job description for these last 3 games is just set up Julian Lewis to where there's something there that Buffs fans go, I want to see more of that. I'm going to stick around. I'm going to be there next year to check this out. I want to see more of Julian Lewis. If they can leave you wanting more with Julian Lewis, they will have succeeded with the next 3 games. Season is the season, right? That's done. It's where they are. Not much they can do to change it. All they can do is focus on these last 3 games and focus on Julian Lewis and say, can we put him in a position to succeed over these 3 games? And then we go out and take part in an extensive search for the right play caller for Julian Lewis to make sure next year we can do this thing. And if they do that, then this year will look like kind of a blip. But you have to wonder about Deion Sanders' ability to find these people, which is a bigger problem for this program than others because Deion Sanders is kind of one of those CEO type head coaches. He's not getting in the weeds with the play calling. He's not like Sean Payton is with the Denver Broncos. Okay, he oversees, he delegates. He motivates. He sets kind of the program's vision. That's what he's supposed to do. But if you're that type of person, you got to get your coordinators right. And on the offensive side, I don't think he's done it yet. Although, I mean, are we absolutely sure that Sean Lewis couldn't have done the job? That felt like a quick hook. Got to get it right. For now, just glimmers of hope with Julian Lewis over the last 3 games. And you've done your job, regroup, get the right play caller in, and see if you can make this thing work. Because, again, if you can't, like, I would understand if Buff fans are like, it goes back to that question I asked a couple of weeks ago. Like, at what point is just being relevant not enough? Just being talked about. That CU football games being the thing to do on Saturdays. When is that not going to be enough? When is it that there will be real expectations for Deion Sanders to win and be in the college football playoff? Or else, ... If this doesn't work with Julian Lewis, those questions will come up. 719-247-1313. Let's stick with the Broncos here. This one coming in from the 719. Maybe the first 3 quarters playbook should look more like the fourth quarter. Or is that Sean Payton micromanaging Bo Nix in the first 3 quarters? That's exactly what it is. You answered your own question. This is Sean Payton in the first 3 quarters having a choice, and in the fourth quarter having no choice. That's what it boils down to. Fourth quarter, game in the balance, or the Broncos trailing, it's All these best laid plans go out the window, and it's just what is the next play that I can call to be successful? And I think that is tied up with some of the frustration that I'm hearing from Broncos fans. And it speaks to Bo Nix's, the audio that I played earlier of the idea that at some point in the game, it looks effortless for the Denver Broncos. Like it looks like they can move at will down the field. That's the frustration. It's not that you're not seeing it at any point. That's a different type of frustration. The frustration where you're going, man, they didn't get going at all. And it was just the defense the entirety of the game. In the fourth quarter, it's both sides of the football. Heck, it's all three phases. So that's what it's that. It's the carrot that the Broncos are dangling. Like they can put together a complete full team effort in the fourth quarter. But that's what's dangerous. You want more of that. Like, why couldn't we have that all the time? And you're not wrong for asking. But that's the frustration, is that there is clearly a formula for the Denver Broncos offense to put up points and to move the ball, even against good teams. Why isn't it that way for 4 quarters? You answer your own question. Because Sean Payton came out of semi-retirement to do it his way. And the thing that he has going in his favor that you don't, they're on a 6-game winning streak. 719-24-7, 1313. One more break. Come back after this. Of course, there's this aspect of what's going on in Boulder as well, as Brett astutely points out. I believe Julian Lewis's middle name is Portal. Yeah, there's also that too. That's if Julian Lewis decides to stay in Boulder. All the more important to lay out to him, even though he is a young freshman, because that's the world that they live in now. Sell him on what you're doing. And look, putting him in a position to succeed will help. Right? I know that all of these college students are just being painted as where can I get the most money? And there is a reason why they're being painted that way. I don't know if it's the majority of them, the overwhelming majority, but there's enough there to say, yeah, that's kind of a big driver for most of them. But I still believe that there are players in college football that do still, at a certain level, value where they can have success. Because having success puts you in the NFL. It helps. I know it's not the greatest example because he is a transfer, but just look at what being in the right spot was for Fernando Mendoza, quarterback of Indiana. If the Buffs can have some success over the final 3 games and show that maybe with Julian Lewis, there's a future there, then maybe they can sell Julian Lewis on that. That he can continue to progress to be an NFL draft pick and a high one. But all the, we're going way into the future. Starting with West Virginia, Julian Lewis's first start. Start there. What can you do to make him successful in that game? And then all of this other stuff you can get into at a later time. Shifting gears for just a moment, what would be the point of me having this platform, being able to speak to you on a daily basis, if I didn't use it to discuss the pitfalls of animal cloning? Tom Brady, what are you doing? I have to, and I know it's close to the end of the show and you may be driving. I really need to know because I am not the biggest animal person. I grew up with dogs, a lot of them growing up. I have made a decision now as an adult who is in charge of these things that I do not have pets. So maybe I've lost my way and maybe I'm not the right person to speak on this. But I had an attachment to the dogs and the cat I had growing up. I was heartbroken when they passed away. And I understand that connection. Tom Brady cloning his dog is weird. And also oddly feels like it's on brand for him. Here's a guy that can't bear the thought that he's allowed to just do one thing. Right? This is a guy that clearly believes that it is limitless for him. This is a guy that cannot even understand why anybody would raise their hand at him being both an analyst for Fox and a part owner in the Raiders. He can't understand for the life of him why that might be problematic. Because he's Tom Brady and he gets what he wants. And if I was once married to Giselle, I guess I would feel that way too. But that's why I say this is kind of on brand for him, because to me, and this isn't a religious argument. I just think it's really weird to clone your pet. I do. I'm not anti-pet. I have made a decision for me and my sons that we do not have pets. But I am not anti-pet. I like dogs. I like cats. I have family members that have those animals, and I will pet them when I see them. This feels weird, but it feels like a guy that isn't one to say, okay, I can't have that. Right? Okay, I can't be both the owner of the Raiders and a analyst on Fox at the same time. That's okay. I'll be happy with this one thing. He does not accept the idea that his pet passed away, and I'm sure it was a traumatic experience for him, as it is most pet owners, as it was for me growing up. Devastated when my pets would pass away. Devastated. But this opportunity arose for him to clone his dog, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to do it. Of course I'm going to do this. I don't have to actually say goodbye to my pet. It's weird. It's weird. And the fact that Tom Brady also has a financial stake in this company is also very on brand. Because I'm not sure. I don't know the chicken or the egg. Did Tom Brady use their services and then buy in because he loved the results? Or did he buy in and then is like, oh, wait, I can do this for my dog? I get why Tom Brady would do it, but in a general sense, I don't get why people would do this. But he's Tom Brady. I think that's the best way that I can explain why Tom Brady would do something like that, because he is Tom Brady. And he is limitless, and he gets whatever he wants. And shame on you and I for at least raising the question that maybe one of the things that he's gotten, he shouldn't have. And I fully understand that I can say that, given that I am not Tom Brady. I do not have the same opportunities as Tom Brady. I am not as accomplished as Tom Brady. So I understand that I may very well have the same mindset that Tom Brady does if I was anything like Tom Brady. It feels entitled. That's what I'm really getting at. It feels entitled. I like pets. I like animals. I don't get this. So there, like, I have fully utilized my platform for the hard-hitting sports topics of the day. I do want to talk to you about something that I am a little bit more in favor of. If you know, as a guy, when something just feels off, I mean, you know it, right? You're tired, maybe you're lacking motivation, not performing at work, at home, or in the gym like you used to. Know that it may not just be aging. It could be low testosterone. That's where Synergenics and Low T Center come in. Their testosterone replacement therapy has helped thousands of men, many of them right here in our own backyard, feel like themselves again. I've heard from customers of Low T Center that it changed their life. It got them back to the person that they were a few years ago, or even longer than that. And what the best part about what they're doing, you could start with the free testosterone test. There's literally no downside. Go in, get tested, no cost, no pressure, just answers. Don't let this be another thing that you keep putting off. The best version of you is out there, full of energy, confidence, and drive, but you got to take that first step. Go to trtmvp.com. That's trtmvp.com and book your free test today. It has been my distinct honor and pleasure to serve you on this Wednesday. My thanks to Corey Roldan of KKTV and Shay Serrano. Pick up the book, Expensive Basketball. You will not regret it. And most of all, thanks to you for listening. Again, I will be traveling with Air Force women's basketball the next 2 days. So I'll be on Twitter for the Broncos Raiders game tomorrow night. Hope you'll join me there. And then we'll reconvene in this setting again on Monday here on Extra Sports 1300.